Hello, hello. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we are going to be talking about, it seems like there's a lot on the roster today. So I just posted this article, but CNN, they are compiling a list. They have a list, a very extensive list of all these election deniers, but Stacey Abrams isn't on the list. And the reason why she's not on the list is because they're only talking about 2020 election. So that's terribly convenient. So we'll be talking about that. Also, President Joe Biden was interviewed by, I guess now this, but Dylan Mulvaney, something. He is a trans person. I don't know. All his stuff seems very Dylan Mulvaney. His stuff seems so performative, and the stuff that he would say as he explores girlhood is just so offensive and stereotypical and gross. But he's getting, these, play from Alta. We talked about that video not too long ago, but he's at the White House and asking Biden if he thinks that there should be any sort of if states should outlaw gender affirming care. And he says no, he thinks not only from a legal standpoint, but he thinks it's immoral. And when the White House talks about gender affirming care, they're not just talking about pronouns, they're talking about allowing them to socially transition by going on different sports teams, going into different locker rooms, bottom surgery, top surgery, and also puberty blockers. So that's what the president is running on, I guess. That's what he's deciding to put his stock in, as there's people around the country concerned about their kids and the economy, and whether their kids are going to have to be forced to take vaccines, the COVID vaccine, for no apparent reason. There's just a lot that people are concerned with, but that's what the White House wants to make and has been making a priority for the weirdest of reasons. I've had my theories, but we'll talk about some of that today. And of course, they have economic woes, but Nancy Pelosi just doesn't want to talk about inflation. She just wants to shift the conversation, and I have a clip of her talking about that, which I think is pretty hysterical. So before we jump into it, I want to encourage you guys to go blackteanews.com, check out different content I have on the website. Again, I just dropped an article. You guys can share that around. You can share other articles that I have and different videos that I have. So make sure that you guys are sharing the stuff. Please make sure that you're dropping in your email at the website. Check out different merch that we have, like the cool goat hoodies. They come in different colors too. We have the Denounce White Supremacy Defeat Joe Biden shirt. Also, Be Better Not Better. I love that shirt. Very cool. Comes out very cool. So check out the stuff on the website. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. It costs to stream, it costs to run my website, it costs to travel, everything costs. You're well aware of that. If you can help with the overhead at all, I very much appreciate that. If you can't, I appreciate you watching and sharing and tagging and subscribing, not just following on Facebook, but also subscribing on YouTube. All that really does help. So thank you to everyone. I want to also thank Bride of Michigan PAC. I'm in their studio. Bride of Michigan PAC has an ad that has launched in Wayne County regarding Prop 3 that I did make it. So I'm glad that we are able to get that on the air and spreading the word about that. I did put it out there that we were trying to raise funds in general so we can do different stuff. So I thank my followers for people who chipped in. God bless you guys. So hopefully we can just make a difference. And if I say something today that triggers you, nobody cares. They don't care. It doesn't work like that. So before we jump into like a lot of the meat of the story, I don't have a meme for you guys today, but I do want to mention that Ethan Crumbley pled guilty in the Oxford high school shooting. Most of you, I think, know that I'm from Michigan. Oxford is not too far from me. This really rocked Michigan, particularly my surrounding area. So I'm at least glad that that has happened, that he's pled guilty. I hope that that can begin to really help and heal the people who have been affected by this, the families that have been affected by this. Um, I know so many people who knew somebody personally or who was there, um, and it was a tragedy. And at least they have pled guilty, so there won't be those sort of games in the courtroom, unlike the Waukesha shooter. I mean, not shooter. He wasn't a shooter. He rammed a SUV into a parade, and for some reason wanted to represent himself, and it was just a hot mess. I don't know if you guys have been following that trial at all. We haven't really talked too much about it on the show. We talked about the incident when it happened, but that's a crazy story. So um, anything to not have to make the families go through some kind of a bigger media circus is good. So I just wanted to update, because I know there's people who are local who also watch, and um, that's a big news of the day. So I'm glad to hear that. Okay, so let's move on. Let's move on. So Nancy Pelosi said that you have to shift the talking points away from inflation. And she had an interesting approach that I just want to share with you guys.
And the fact is that when I hear people talk about inflation, as I heard him there, we have to change that subject. Inflation is a global phenomenon. Yes. The EU, the European Union, the UK, the British have a higher inflation rate than we do here. It's not, the fight is not about inflation. It's about the cost of living.
Okay. So it's not about inflation. It's just about the cost of living. Which everything she's right that the cost of living is really high right now. The cost of living is high also, though, because inflation is high, and you have to do something about inflation. Like you can't get around that, because even if you're like, oh, the cost of living is high, so we have to raise the minimum wage, and it's like, bruh, that dollar still isn't getting far. People, their wages went up since a few years ago, but the inflation is so high that it's eaten up the wages. It's eating up the wages, and some people haven't got any kind of raise. Now, if you work for some unions that are or the postal service or something like that, and they have it actually in their contracts that their wages just go up automatically with inflation. So there's probably quite a few people who have jobs that are related to the government who have some kind of cushy deal that don't care too much maybe about how high inflation is, because it's kind of baked into the cake. But you can't just shift the conversation away like that. Like, you can try to Jedi mind trick people, but people aren't going to forget that their wallets are hurting, that it's hard to feed their families, that it's hard to even travel to work. Just say, well, yeah, the cost of living. Yeah, why is the cost of living high? Because inflation. And it is a problem around the world. The world engaged in some really stupid policies for a long time, for a very long time. So, yeah, it's a global problem, but we're still feeling it, and the leaders aren't making it better. The lockdown policies that we had were awful. But Biden was in no hurry to fix it. It just really made it worse. And Trump, there's a great video by Jordan Peterson talking about Trump. At the very least, you got to give him credit for trying to warn Europe about how they were messing up their energy, and especially by depending on Russia so much, and they were really putting themselves in a bind. And so everyone was in a bind once this, Putin and Ukraine situation started to happen, but they didn't make decisions that made it any better. And now you have, last week we played on Thursday, I guess it was Chris Hayes from MSNBC was actually saying why it was good that Biden is releasing money from our oil reserves, our strategic oil reserves that should be for emergencies, so he can change the price of gas. Because if we go see the price of gas, we're going to be like, I don't want to vote for Democrats. And we need to save our democracy. So at first they were saying they can't affect the gas prices. And then when they started doing it a couple cents, they're like, oh, he's a darn hero. And then when it went way back up, they're like, oh, he has nothing to do with that. And now it's, well, Biden has to affect the gas prices because of democracy. So it's just really, 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 really wild. The ways, the routes they decide to go to not take accountability. Like, they could just be like, you know what, we got a lot done in the past couple of years to help Americans, and we're gonna really try to tighten up our spending and really just spend it on essential stuff, because hey, that adds to inflation. We did the things that we needed to do, and now we're gonna go into the next session, we're gonna promise to like tighten our belts a bit, but they're not doing that. And you know what? I have faith that the Republicans will do it better than the Democrats will. Well, with Biden being in the White House, I don't know how much he'd be willing to sign with a Republican sort of agenda pushing that stuff through. So perhaps they will go like during the Obama years, they were like, it's the party of no. So if Republicans were just like the party of no for a while and just like wouldn't let dumb stuff go through and really, really tried to, they have to pass budgets, but tried to keep them as low as possible, that would probably be the best thing that they can do right now. As far as legislation. But red wave is coming. Hopefully it's a tsunami everywhere and we get some of that in Michigan. But we'll see. We'll see. But that's desperation, folks. Utter desperation. So desperate. Biden, in his interview with Now This, he mentioned something about student loans. If you didn't know, the Supreme Court blocked his executive orders. So, but Biden is talking as if it wasn't an executive order, that Congress passed it, specifically passed it by 2. So how do you get something wrong like that when you sign an executive order and now you're saying it was a bill that was passed by like the skin of your teeth or something like that? By 2? So how can you make up such an elaborate scheme in your mind? And so the RNC had a little clip going around. People are like, oh, it must be out of context, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, here's a little bit of it.
The other piece, what we're trying to do is, you probably are aware, I've just signed a law that's being challenged by my Republican colleagues, who are the same people who got PPP loans for up to close to, in some cases, up to $500,000-$600,000. They have no problem with that. The individuals in Congress got those. But what we've provided for is, if you went to school, if you qualify for a Pell Grant, you qualify for you qualify for $20,000 in debt forgiveness. Secondly, if you don't have one of those loans, you just get $10,000 written off. It's passed. I got it passed by a vote or 2, and it's in effect. And already a total of, I think it's now 13 million people have applied for that service.
This is a lie. It's blatantly not true. It's not a law. He signed an executive order. He didn't have the authority to pass what he passed. Or not pass it, but to write what he wrote. He didn't have the authority. And he always knew he didn't have the authority. That's what they kept saying, like, oh, Biden doesn't have the authority to do that. Nancy Pelosi was like, oh, he doesn't have the authority to do that. And then he decided to do it, which the same thing happened with vaccine mandates. Like, oh, well, we're not going to do that. We don't have the authority to do that. And then it's like, well, we'll find a way. We'll find a way, and then get shut down by the courts. And when it gets shut down by the courts, then they're like, oh, those tyrannical conservative justices. Bro, you knew that it was not constitutional. You knew that it was not legal when you pursued it. You just wanted to jerry-rig Frankenstein your way into a policy. And now you're blatantly just straight up saying that it was a law that got passed by like 2 votes. it's an alternate reality. So either he's just like just blatantly lying, or he's just severely confused. How do you get this confused about something like this? Making up a scenario where it just passed by 2 and Republicans are now just shutting it down. It's really strange. Like, I'm curious I'm sure Peter Doocer, someone's going to ask the press secretary about it. I haven't seen what she might have said about it yet, but it's a remarkable thing to lie about. And if he's not lying and he's just like that confidently confused, that's concerning. Very, very concerning. Speaking of Biden, since we're on the topic, so he had Dylan Mulvaney there in the attendance in that interview. If you're not familiar, which I don't think most people were familiar until this Ulta ad that ran like a week or 2 ago for a podcast where Dylan was talking about all things girlhood, even though Dylan is a grown man. Dylan was on Broadway for the Book of Mormon or something, and then started, chronicling his life as a trans woman and adventures in girlhood, and had pretty sexist, stereotypical ways that he would portray his girlhood. And if a comedian or anyone else tried to say the things that Dylan says or how he tries to portray being a girl, they'd be called a sexist pig. If someone, when white people bronze their face or put makeup on their face or tart whatever, and they pretend to be black people, we call that blackface. And then we criticize them, and then we want to cancel them, even if they're not doing like minstrel show stuff. Nowadays, even if you dress up in admiration, they try to cancel you. So how is it that a man can be so sexist and degrading and stereotypical toward women while cosplaying as a woman, talking about girlhood, and they get attached to beauty brands and invited to the White House? Here's an example of one of Dylan's videos that I'll play for you guys. There are more and there are worse, but here's one for you all. I hope you enjoy.
For being a girl, round of applause for the makeup. And I wore this outfit shopping today, and I thought that these might be my new shopping shorts, but I was walking around and everyone was staring, and I was like, oh, okay, what's going on? And they were all staring directly at my crotch. And I went, oh, I forgot that my crotch doesn't look like other women's crotches sometimes, because mine doesn't look like a little Barbie pocket. And I thought, okay, Dylan, you have some options here. Number one, you can stop wearing clothes that fit like this and just find looser fitting items. Number two, I can do a tuck, which is going to have to be a whole other video, but it's very painful and involved or number three, I just normalize it and I wear clothes like this, and we all just normalize women having bulges sometimes, because we're coming up on bikini season, baby, and you might see a bulge or two. So normalize the bulge. We are normalizing the bulge. Women can have bulges, and that's okay. We're not gonna stare at their crotches while they're wearing their little shopping shorts at the mall. Oh, thank you. Love you. Bye. Or number three.
So I saw Steven Crowder, they were talking about this clip, and one of the guys he had on the show said the term Barbie pockets is so creepy. If Trump had said grab him by the Barbie pockets instead of grab him by the kitty cat that he said, he probably wouldn't have been president. He said that's how creepy Barbie pockets is. TikTok, there's a lot of different people on TikTok. I'm not a child and I'm on TikTok or whatever, but there's a lot of people on TikTok who are young, and the app is skewed very young. And this is just creepy. It's weird. It looks a lot it's very performative. I don't know how real this individual's gender dysphoria is real, but he can't know what it's like to be a woman, and he's doing a very bad job regardless. It's not just a thing you can pretend to do, it's just what you are, but he's just way out of pocket with his portrayals. And the bulge, singing about your bulge and wearing the pants and normalizing it. And then also, like, that song wasn't catchy, he was pitchy, and we could go on. But this is the individual that Ulta, is highlighting, and also who Biden just invited to the White House. So which Dylan also did talk about on TikTok as well, but he couldn't post anything until the interview had aired. So here's a portion of it, just a snippet of Dylan asking Joe Biden, should states be able to outlaw gender affirming care? And Biden says no.
Do you think states should have a right to ban gender affirming health care?
I don't think any state or anybody should have the right to do that, as a moral question and as a legal question. I just think it's wrong.
Now, mind you, this man is a Catholic, and he just thinks it's wrong to not just legally, but also morally to ban this stuff. Now, when the White House, the Biden administration has released a graphic talking about what is gender affirming care. And so what is it? Adopting gender affirming hairstyles, clothing, name, gender, pronouns, and restrooms and other facilities. When is it used? At any age? And they claim it's reversible. Yeah. So when they're saying social affirmations, that's if your boy says he's a girl, letting people like Leah Thomas play on the girls' swim team. That's how you affirm them, and using the proper pronouns, all the other kind of stuff. So that isn't just something that the individual has to do. That's something that they expect society to participate in. So there's that. Puberty blockers, which, by the way, is chemical castration drugs that they, like something like Lupron, they give to sexual predators in prison to sterilize them. These same drugs they give to kids. Planned Parenthood makes videos advertising, encouraging kids to get it. They refer kids to where they can get it. They claim that it's reversible. Not really. You can't just pause puberty. You can do some really detrimental, irreversible damage to your kids. But they also approve of that. Testosterone hormones for those who are assigned female at birth, and estrogen hormones for those who are assigned male at birth. And they give that to early adolescence and onward, and partially reversible. At least they said partially. Scott Nugent, who's a lesbian trans man, she can't go back, and she'll never really look like a woman, not just by stopping to take the hormones and stuff. Scott doesn't actually expect to live very long because she just keeps getting all these infections and stuff because her immune system is shot. People aren't really telling kids the dangers of taking this stuff. What else? Gender affirming surgeries. Top surgery to create male typical chest shape and enhance breast, bottom surgery on genitals and reproductive organs, and facial feminization or other procedures typically used in it says typically used in adulthood or case by case in adolescence. Oh, so there it goes, admitting it. And that's not reversible. At least they said that. So yeah, they definitely chop off the breasts of young minors. Chloe Cole got her breast chopped off at 15. There was a hospital, was it Boston, where Libs of TikTok called a hospital and got them to admit that they did gender affirming hysterectomies on 16-year-olds. The hospital then claimed that that wasn't the case. And maybe someone was wrong, but the person on the phone claimed that they had kids that age or younger that would come in for stuff like that. So um people who like they don't sterilize women. Why would they wouldn't sterilize kids? They do this crap to kids for money and ideology. They do. They will. And if people are willing to euthanize young men in Canada for being diabetic and blind, euthanization is 3% of Canadian deaths right now. Don't tell me that people wouldn't do this stuff to kids. There are people marching to kill babies at any time during pregnancy. That's like on our ballot right now. And there's people who are gung-ho fighting for it. Fighting for it. And people are like, we just want to restore Roe v. Wade. Well, restoring Roe v. Wade just means your state can have no limitations on abortion if that's what your state decides. That's all. That's what you're saying. That's what you're saying. That's what you're saying. I don't know what people all believe will happen when Roe is restored in your state, but all it just means is you have the opportunity to have no restrictions. That's what it means. Roe v. Wade stopped states from saving lives. That's what it did. That's what it did. So yeah, don't tell me what people aren't willing to do to kids. So anyway, this is what Biden supports. This is what his administration supports. And of course, his assistant health secretary is Rachel Levine, who is a man who believes he's a woman, who is trans and believes that minors should be able to have gender affirming care, who said in the past that minors can get gender affirming care without parental consent if they're fully emancipated. So the stuff is freaking weird. So as there's different states that are trying to outlaw this stuff, you have Biden and I guess the DOJ and folks who are going to probably push very hard back on this stuff. I don't understand totally why, like, if you thought this was a good, like, election strategy, it's not. Again, there's people who are worried about how they're going to be able to get to point A to B in their car because gas is so high, food is so high. I mean, we went to the grocery store the other day and my sister's just like, oh my gosh, the chicken is $15. And but she's just like going through how much stuff costs. Everybody's doing that. And then Biden is at the White House like, yeah, I don't think you should be able to ban chemically castrating kids. If that's immoral. That's where we're at as a society right now. That's where we're at. So we're not in good shape, in my opinion. So when people talk about slippery slopes and opening Pandora's box, like there's a lot of pushback about let me go ahead and show you this ad. There's this ad that I saw last night. It got posted like 3 days ago. They got in Michigan, this is regarding Prop 3. They got the prosecutor from Genesee County, Wayne County, and also Oakland County to talk about this. And they're all saying what the people on the right, the people who are against Prop 3, they're lying and they're just spreading propaganda. So this is their ad.
Opponents of Proposal 3 will say anything to defeat it.
They're lying and making outlandish claims to trick you into outlawing abortion.
Parental consent will remain under Proposal 3.
As prosecutors, it's clear Proposal 3 ensures common sense regulations remain in place to protect women and children.
Prosecutors and respected medical organizations all support Proposal 3.
To restore the rights we had under Roe v. Wade, vote yes on 3.
So that's their ad. Again, restoring Roe v. Wade just means that your state can have no restrictions on abortion if that's what they want. That's what it means when you say restore Roe. That's what it means. So that doesn't mean that much. I know people hear that and they're like, we just want things to go back to the way they were, I guess. But you don't quite understand what Roe v. Wade was. And a lot of people don't, because we haven't really been under Roe, because Casey and other stuff came in and other laws, rulings anyway, changed things. So there's that, but they're lying through their teeth about the parental protections. And I don't know, maybe, and you know what? Not everyone is so like devious into the whole gender ideology train. So maybe they are not thinking that deep on it. I imagine that Miss Worthy, you know, isn't like anti-parental rights or something, like maybe to a degree. I don't know. But here are the facts of the case. Facts of the matter are, these people pushing this change, this constitutional amendment, believe that your minors have a right to sterilization and abortion. They believe that. The defenders of it, who will say, "Oh, these people are lying," they still hold the opinion that your minors have the right to these things. They do. Again, Planned Parenthood is one of the pushers of it. They advertise and push puberty blockers to kids. They give hormones to people. That's just the truth. They've made videos themselves. I think I've played one or two on here. They believe that minors should be able to get abortions. And guess what? Your minor can get an abortion right now in Michigan without your consent. They just have to get a judge to bypass it. So tell me why a judge, especially if they're a left-leaning judge, if a minor says, "Hey, I want," if puberty blockers, which are sterilization drugs, and puberty, it's your body preparing for pregnancy. I don't see under Prop 3, since it's all matters relating to pregnancy, and it's not limited to what's on the list. I don't know why you'd write something like that. Let's say puberty blockers were count. They want to get puberty blockers, and mom says no. They have a right to reproductive freedom. Why wouldn't that judge rule in favor of the minor? Why wouldn't that judge rule in favor of the minor? If a 15-year-old's having consensual sex with their boyfriend, they don't want to have the baby, and they want to have an abortion, and the parents are like, "You did the deed, like, you know what happened. And I think this will be a mistake. I don't want you to have to live with this regret. We'll figure it out. If they say no, they go before a judge. You think the judge isn't going to say this person has reproductive freedom? They can be able to have it. They should be able to have it. And guess what? Most folks on the left probably think that parent is a monster and that child should be able to get one anyway. So all of this smoke and mirror saying they're lying. They believe that's why every individual is not defined as an adult. They gave it to everyone. And they didn't even say woman or female in the amendment. So it's everybody. They didn't define it as an adult because they believe your children have the right to do this. And if you are an obstacle, they will find a way around you. Period. They're lying. or maybe it's ignorance and not malicious. Who knows? Maybe they're not thinking that deeply on it. But I've talked to other prosecutors. I've talked to other lawyers who's practiced for a while. They do not agree with their interpretation of it. Maybe people won't agree with my interpretation, but the point is that they will still admit that, first of all, constitutional laws trump Constitution trumps state laws. And they did say in the ad, that you can regulate different things for the amendment. That is true. However, it has to be a compelling state interest. And the compelling state interest is not for any sort of moral, ethical reason surrounding a baby, FYI. It has to be limited in the interest of protecting the individual seeking the care. It has to be up to clinical standards. And these aren't or options, these are and options. So the third requirement is that it cannot infringe on their autonomous decision making. So let's say your 13-year-old once puberty blockers, all these clinical standards say, yeah, kids, when they say that they're, you know, transgender or something, you should start affirming. You go before a judge, they're left leaning. What do you think's going to happen? That child has a right to reproductive freedom. What do you think's going to happen? What if you're a teenager? Not every, like, people always talk about minors, and on the left they talk about a 10-year-old being raped by their uncle or something like that, as if they don't know teenagers having sex in high school. I have a friend, I've had her on the show, who had a very traumatic abortion into the second trimester. It was a 2-day procedure. The anesthesia did not work. So she felt the doctor like tugging on her insides. They were preparing her cervix, and she passed out crying on the table. What kind of monsters would just like let that happen? And she had an abortion, not for some medical reason, not even financial. I'm not saying she was in the best financial straits, but the reason why she did it was because she wanted a blank slate. She was in high school at the time. And what she got instead was a traumatic abortion, the death of her child on her conscience, though, she's forgiven in Christ. And also, when you mention abortion, her stomach starts doing flips, as if she feels the remnants of the pain of what they did to her. So, you can't just try to pretend that it's just for those really, 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 really rare cases, when that's just not the matters of fact. It's just not the case. And they would believe that person has the right. So again, they want to bypass your parental rights. They do. They do. They do. Because they believe that your minors have a right to these things. That's why they put in the amendment. That's why they put it in there. That's why they put it in there. And that's why they protect everyone who will help them do it. So to the prosecutors in Genesee and Wayne and Oakland, shame on you. And in the ad as well, when they're quoting it, they don't quote the actual proposal. They quote the ballot summary. They quote the ballot summary, not the actual proposal. Very interesting. People should, if you don't believe me, go read the whole entire thing. It's pretty extreme. It's pretty extreme. People read the ballot summary like, oh, it's not confusing. Go read. You're not even reading the whole thing. So I just wanted to put that out there so people were very aware of what was going on, and I wanted to debunk them. They've been debunked. It's just, there's just too much up in the air. Too much for litigation. Too much that can change. And the main takeaway should be, why did they want to give these children this constitutional right, but not constitutionally protected a parent's right to defend their child and protect their child? Why? Why'd they do that? And they could say, oh, well, we felt we didn't have to because there was different laws. Okay, but protecting, enshrining something in the Constitution is way different than there being laws that can be changed, that can be overruled, that can be whatever. The Constitution is the law of the land. And they didn't feel that parents protecting their children is sacred enough to meet that standard. So let's move on. Jake Tapper is talking about the repercussions of education now. And he says we need to have a national conversation.
I have to say, I'm surprised that there hasn't been a national conversation about the damage done to kids because of these school closures and the virtual learning and everything. Because, I mean, I'm not saying there should be a national do-over, but we can't just pretend that fifth graders who are now seventh graders, that didn't happen, you know? Like, I feel like there should be, and not with a blame game. Look, it happened. People did it. It was criticized, the school closures, the virtual learning, et cetera. But here we are. There needs to be like a bipartisan movement, you know?
Why not the blame game, Jake? Why not the blame game? Is it because there's people to easily blame? Like Randy Whiteguard and how she was basically making policies for the CDC and they went along with stuff with the school closures when they weren't actually following the science and the data, and kids virtually weren't in danger of COVID, yet they kept masking them, muzzling them. I was talking to Linda Lee Tarver, who's running for school board, and she was talking about how she kept complaining about how in certain areas they were in Michigan, they still had children masked. So they decided to stop masking the children, and they're probably going to go back to masking after the election. But they didn't want Republicans to keep having something that they could say like, "Why do you keep muzzling these black children?" And they probably go back to it after in December and stuff like that. But it still doesn't make any sense because as Lena Wynn eventually admitted, they're just basically facial decorations. I did a video when I went to the Coleman Young building in Detroit so I could speak before the city council, or technically it was just like a health committee or something. I went on the wrong day. I guess it's not a long story short, but that I thought it was a full council, but not really. So it got recorded. They heard what I had to say, but I had to wear a mask when I came in the building, and I have comments from my fans watching saying, "Oh my gosh, why are you wearing a mask?" I wasn't my choice. They make everyone wear a mask when you go into the building. There's some people that are still so gung-ho about doing it. And then when I had to put it on, it says right on the box, man, that it doesn't work. That doesn't protect you from COVID. It says right on the boxes that they don't protect from COVID. So anyway, I wore it so I didn't want to be kicked out of the building. I wanted to get my point across, and that's what I did. So if y'all had to troll me a little bit, whatever. But there's people still pushing the mask. But they had kids muzzled for the longest time, even though they were in less danger than adults from COVID. There were people who they said you had to be vaccinated to attend online school, like in different colleges. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make it didn't. And the only reason they did it because they wanted to coerce people into taking it. Why? Is it just because they bought so many? Is it because they don't want any like, I don't know, original folks that that you can't compare to like the people who've been injected? Who knows? Who knows? But we didn't follow the science with all this stuff, especially with the kids. And the Democrats are trying to flip the script. We talked a couple of weeks ago how they were trying to actually change the narrative as if it was like Trump's fault or something, even though the Democrats literally ran ads, negative attack ads on Trump because he was trying to get kids to go back to school. So if we have a national conversation about how kids are harmed, why not play the blame game? It's important to lay some blame so we know who not to let back in charge, to hold people we need to hold accountable, because we cannot trust them, and we need to know why they made the decisions that they made, not just say, "Oh, it happened, it sucks, and what can we do moving forward?" Part of moving forward is holding people accountable. And unfortunately, the government's not too good at holding folks accountable, and the voters need to do that. Sometimes they're good at it, and sometimes they are not. But I hope in November we see that people make good decisions about holding people accountable. Some states will probably do it better than others, and I hope my state is one of them. But here's a news story talking a little bit about test scores.
We're going to turn now to a new report showing how students are suffering setbacks across the country. Math test scores dropping dramatically in the wake of the pandemic. Stephanie Ramos has the details. Good morning, Stephanie.
George, good morning. This morning, alarming news about student test scores declining across the country. According to the National Assessment of Educational Progress, which serves as a kind of national report card, declines were seen among high and lower performing students in 4th and 8th grade in both math and reading. The scores fell to levels not seen in 2 decades. Math scores for 8th grade fell by 8 points from 282 in 2019 to 274 this this year and the sharpest decline recorded in more than half a century of testing. Now, as we've reported, when students returned to in-person classes last year, educators, they scrambled to manage COVID surges, quarantines, mask mandates, and staffing shortages. They also are facing increasing mental health needs. These results come after President Biden's American Rescue Plan provided a historic $122 billion in funding to help schools safely reopen and stay open, combat learning loss, and address student mental health. But clearly, the damage was already done.
Yeah, the damage was already done. And also some of your money that was supposed to go toward that some stuff went also to like critical race theory type stuff, inclusion, diversity, equity sort of training and all that other kind of garbage. So they definitely put woke stuff in it. They gave themselves some raises and are spending the money poorly, unfortunately, and really kept your kids out of school so they could keep negotiating to get more money. Unfortunately, there's so many great teachers now, I'm sure, but I had so many good teachers in school. I didn't like all my teachers, but I did have some really good teachers. I went to bad schools, and even in good schools or bad schools, you have good teachers. I went to good schools that I really liked. I still wouldn't send my kids to public schools, but but unfortunately, there's people who run the teachers unions who do not have the best interest for the kids at heart. And parents need to do what's best for their children. A lot of people have turned to homeschooling, especially after saying they are capable of doing it after people had to do virtual stuff. People have turned to homeschooling after seeing so much woke stuff, or the lockdowns and restrictions being, too much for their kids. So they decided that they would, pick up the slack and teach them. But there are parents who would like their kids to go to different schools and have the options to have vouchers so they can send them to different private schools or better public schools or help with their homeschooling. In Arizona, there's most of the money you can take. I don't remember the percentage, but you can take a huge percentage of the money because it's like money per child. And so you can have those dollars follow your child, and they still put them in public school as well. That was kind of like the compromise. And it works good for people, and people like in my state would like something like, there's plenty of people who would like school choice, but then when it gets talked about on a debate stage, like Governor Gretchen Whitmer was like, oh, she pretended that the vouchers are just something that goes to like helping rich people or something. No, people would have options to the world would open up to a lot of kids if parents could choose how those dollars are going to be spent for their child and where they're going to spend it, as opposed to it just going to their local public school. And then, so you're already paying for public school. So if you don't want them to go to public school, you're paying for the public school through your tax dollars. And then you're also paying for them to go somewhere else as well. So if it's really about the kids, let it be about the kids. But people don't want the parents in charge. They want them locked in certain areas, locked in certain situations, locked in their indoctrination camps. And they don't want them to have the opportunity to truly be free. And a lot of it also has to do with teachers unions. But if we want to have a national conversation, again, we need to point the finger and remember who's to blame and ask ourselves, why do we elect people like that? Why do we put them in charge? And are we going to make the same mistakes again? Unfortunately, a lot of people will make the same mistakes again. But in that case, if you do, I guess you get what you deserve when you vote poorly. Moving on, I want to talk about CNN. And again, I have this article up at blacktnews.com. You can check this out. But CNN decided to do an article about a list of election deniers so everyone can know who's on the ballot, who denied the election results, because these people are threats to democracy, right? They're absolute threats to democracy. But there's one person who is probably jumping out at your mind. When I say election denier, you probably have someone in mind, and they're a Democrat, right? You know, I'm probably talking about Stacey Abrams, Georgia, who would not concede that she lost to Kemp, who kept saying that she won the election. There's all kinds of big cuts, like of different videos that people pasted together with her different denials for her to say she's never denied it. That is another denial. But she's definitely said that she's won, etc. She's not on CNN's list. And the reason why she's not on CNN's list is because how convenient, it's only regarding the 2020 election. Only election deniers from 2020 are the ones who are the threats to democracy, apparently. So they have a list talking about Republicans who are running for Secretary of State, who are running for Senate, and who are running for governor. So I have a good friend who's on one of those lists, but it's very broad for who qualifies, because it's not just someone who's like, oh, Dominion software changed stuff. It's not just that. It's everyone who has tried to overturn, rejected, questioned, or declined to affirm the 2020 results. So that's pretty wild. So I've had conversations with lots of folks. I'm not one of those people who believe like election software dominion, like into the whole, that stuff. I like to put it as I believe that President Trump legitimately lost a rigged election, and then we could talk about how many dollars went into, like, Mark Zuckerberg pouring in a lot of money to Jocelyn Benson's nonprofit for elections, which Time magazine wrote an article saying the shadow campaign that saved the 2020 election. You could talk about different rule changes that weren't legal, different things that the Secretary of State, like Benson, did as far as like voter signature, just stuff that people weren't supposed to do in our state, in Pennsylvania, and other different places that helped to lead to the result. And then also you had information that was stranglehold from like the FBI and then different social media platforms with Hunter Biden, etc. So all that stuff I said was just true, right? I'd probably make this list. Now Tudor Dixon is one of the people on the list. She's running against Gretchen Whitmer, and so I don't know how early like some of her rhetoric might have been, but I saw her in Macomb with all the other like Republican candidates who were running at the time, and and she was pretty. She's way softer on the issue than everyone else was, and she wouldn't say, deny that it was. She wouldn't say that it was legitimate or whatever, but she basically went down the same sort of track that I just laid out. But they still put her on the list. Like, you can probably suspect like Carrie Lake would be on the list and Blake Masters would be on the list. My friend Christine Cramo's on the list. They put on in Ron DeSantis, and they also put in Kristi Noem. Now, Kristi Noem questioned some things about the elections, and she noted, like, as a lot of people so many people were freaking out election night, especially people who knew someone. I knew people at TFC. I was the first phone call that Christina Cromwell made when she got out of TFC, and there was a lot of alarming stuff. And then I kept calling people, and there was more alarming stuff. I don't see how you can blame people for being concerned. I knew Democrats who didn't believe that Biden won legitimately because they just couldn't wrap their minds around him getting that many votes. So to just pretend like this is a Republican thing is just really insane. So can you imagine, like, of course people would have questions then. Of course people would have questions hearing about pipe bursts and like night mailings, and there was so much stuff going on at the time. So if you question any of that stuff, CNN is just like, oh, you're an election denier. Kristi Noem went to Joe Biden's inauguration. She congratulated him, and she's still on their list. But Stacey Abrams is not on their list because they're only concerned about the 2020 election. Crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So another thing though to point out, if Ron DeSantis and Kristi Noem, people who are running their states, who people like, who are doing pretty well, Ron DeSantis is gonna like just blow through his reelection. If these people are election deniers, and these people are the threats to democracy, doesn't it kind of undermine your argument? Because a lot of people really like these folks. The states are doing well. Like I said, they're going to be reelected pretty easily. So if they're so bad, is your perception a little off? Because if Tudor Dixon or Carrie Lake or Doug Mastriano, thinks that in Pennsylvania. If any of those folks are going to be anything like that, that still sounds pretty good. So is all their election denial stuff kind of overblown, since they consider it so broadly to include kind of like normal people? Now I know they hate Ron DeSantis's guts, but he's not a crazy person, and neither is Kristi Noem and other people that they have on those lists. So I think they're really undermining their argument by including these people, for sure. And Carrie Lake has pointed out, when the media brings up the stuff, she's like, it's our right to question elections. We have First Amendment, and a lot of people on the left have questioned elections. Now, they don't want to care about those people because it doesn't fit their narrative. They just want Republicans to be painted as a threat to democracy. But something that Jen Psaki, I don't think I still have this tweet up, but there was a poll from the New York Times / Siena College poll that reported more than a third of independent voters and smaller but noteworthy contingent of Democrats said that they were open to supporting candidates who reject the legitimacy of the 2020 election, as they assigned greater urgency to their concerns about the economy than to fears about the fate of the country's political system. So, as I noted in my article, I said Democrats have been banking on January 6th to carry them to the finish line on election night, but there isn't enough gas in the tank because Americans literally can't afford gas. So, I knew how much they were laying it on thick with January 6th and trying to blame everything on January 6th, let the whole narrative. I did a TikTok, months ago about how ridiculous it was, and they're still hoping that calls to save democracy are going to distract everyone from the fact that a pack of chicken is $15. More in other places, I'm sure. We got it from Meyer the other day. So good luck with that, but not really, because I want you to lose. Last thing I want to mention before I go is this mural that got painted in my state on the west side, and parents were upset and showed up at a school board meeting, and I guess the artist was in tears after parents flipped the freak out about it, and so NBC News decided to do an article about it, and trying to paint these concerned parents as crazy homophobes, I guess. But here's the painting, the mural, which the sketch was a little bit different. And so so this high schooler won a contest to brighten up the middle school health center, and according to Grant Public Schools. And so the superintendent Brent Zuver was a contestant judge, and they asked if he was aware of the meaning of some of the colors, and he didn't respond. But I guess I have to ask, why is everything in it gay? Why is everything gay in this photo, basically? So first of all, the flying pig with the giant needle, that's not very welcoming and brightening. And I'm not afraid of needles, but when I was a kid, and this is middle school, they tried to give me a shot, and I guess I was in elementary at this time. It wasn't in middle school, but they had to have, my sister had to put me in a full Nelson hold, and I think 2 nurses had to hold my legs, or maybe my mom had a leg and someone else had a leg, and then they stuck me. So I just don't think kids walking into the medical center seeing this pig figure with a giant needle, it was going to be like, yeah, totally, let's go to the health center. But beyond that, there's these 2 kids at the top who look like they're into each other. They're both kind of blushing. there's the black kid, or yeah, he looks black with a trans flag on his shirt. Um, and then there's the girl in pride colors, locked in arms with the black girl with the curly hair that's looking at her blushing. They're both like blushing at each other. Um, so everyone may not be aware, but the black girl is in a pink, purple, dark blue shirt. Those are the colors for bisexuality. Yes, everything has a color. There may be colors I'm missing, but and then this other girl with the pigtails also has the same colored shirt. So she's also apparently bisexual or supporting bisexuals. The two girls holding hands could just be friends, but that's a lot of LGBT representation in something that's supposed to be just a middle school mural. So, and then there's also like the hand signed with the eyeball that wigging parents out, and then there's like a little devil or something. And I don't know if that devil thing is from a game or an anime, but it's just, and that stuff wasn't in the original sketch either. But it's just not appropriate. And people pretending this isn't appropriate. Like I was reading the tweets under like NBC's Twitter page, and someone's like, "Where's the LGBT stuff?" I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Like, you must be lying. You must be lying. It's everywhere. It's everywhere in the picture." Now, I don't expect everybody, especially every adult, to know what the trans flag is and the bisexuals. Like, I don't expect everybody to know this, but you can't see that everyone is like paired up and kind of blushing. Now, when I was in high school many moons ago, because I'm 33, we could, and this is middle school, by the way. This is middle school. A high schooler did it, but it's for a middle school mural. Like PDAs were discouraged, you know. You could hold hands, and people would sneak kisses, but you weren't really supposed to do that. Nobody's kissing in here, but it just seems like to me a lot of PDA stuff. For a mural, we're supposed to be going to the medical center or whatever to get care or something. This is strange. So the high schooler who did it was in tears, they said, I guess from all the backlash. And she said, "I put my art up there to make people feel welcome." The student said, her voice breaking in footage captured in the meeting by WZZM TV, a local news station based in Grand Rapids. One man at the meeting called the mural hate material. Another adult at the meeting said, "I feel like she did a really good job finding excuses to defend things you can put on. None of us are that stupid." And maybe she did it out of sort of malicious, like, I'm going to put my LGBT stuff in there. Maybe she did. Maybe she's just like, this is my world, and I'm putting my world down on paper, and but her mind is just, that's what it is consumed of. So that's what she put on the paper. When people hear inclusion, but yet they're like, oh, I'll put all these stuff that's basically the same. and that to them it's still like inclusive because they are the other. You know, when you go watch like Wakanda Forever or something, or you watch Black Panther, it's not a very inclusive film, right? Not from like a diversity standpoint. There's only like 2 white guys in the film, the bad guy and the guy who's the CIA agent or something like that. They're both played in Lord of the Rings stuff. So someone made a joke one time and said they're Tolkien white guys. Yeah, I thought that was a pretty good joke. But if that's all she's kind of like wrapped up in her world, I don't know. Maybe she didn't mean it like sneaky and malicious, but there is like a lot of stuff in the background that's not supposed to be there. They did quote one conservative or someone who said they're conservative, right-wing, gun-loving American, and they said they thought a lot of people at the meeting were bigoted, and that people started talking about praying the gay away. And you don't need to pray the gay away, just like don't put it on the mural for the middle school. And even in the original sketch, and I don't have it for you guys to look at, but it's in the original NBC News article. I don't know how they didn't catch some of this other stuff anyway, so the adults really kind of missed it. It shouldn't have been picked. And to take all that time, also having it be picked, and then she painted it, and then having all this outrage. The adults dropped the ball. The high schooler, she made what she made, submitted it. It got picked. Perhaps it got picked by the adults because it had all the stuff in it. And the parents are like freaking out now. So one comment that I thought was interesting under the NBC Twitter page, someone said, "I bet all these parents were white." Now I don't know the demographics of this particular school district, but I don't know why white liberals have that perception of minorities, that only white, you think only white conservative Christians would have an issue with this? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Look at go study some more demographics and polling. You're dead wrong if you think only white people would take issue with this. Dead wrong. But yeah, it was not appropriate in the least bit. So I don't know what will happen. I don't know if it'll get removed, but the school dropped the ball on that, because again, I don't think she made what she made, and they picked it, and she took the time to paint it. Took the time to make it, probably all excited because she got it on there, and now they all want to tear it down. I don't like what she made. I don't think it was appropriate. I think she should have known better. Again, it's for a middle school, but it was a high schooler who did it. This could be, she could have tried to pull a fast one on everybody. Maybe again, this is just her world, but at the same time, they accepted it. She's probably very excited, and now everyone hates it. It is the adults' fault. They shouldn't let it get this far. They shouldn't have let it get that far. They should have known it was going to rile up people and make people upset, and it wasn't appropriate. It's not appropriate for the middle school. It's just not. Now, you can think differently, but we are just not going to see eye to eye on that. We are just not. Anyway, thank you guys for watching today. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Please go to blacktnews.com. Check out different content I have on my website. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. It costs to stream, it costs to run my website, it costs to travel, it costs to my software costs, everything costs. So if you would like to support, I very much appreciate it. Make sure that you're liking, subscribing, sharing, doing all the things across to the different social media platforms. All my handles are at Black Tea News, with black like the color, tea like the drink. The only exception is my Twitter page. Please check out different merch that we have on the store, like the My Money, My Business shirt. Like, people try to say abortion's just between a woman and her doctor. I'm like, why are you trying to use my tax dollars for it? So that's why I made this shirt. I also got, Frederick Douglass, Constitution's Glorious Liberty document. Got all kinds of goodies that you guys can check out on the website. So please go ahead and check out the merch. And God bless you guys. And I'll see you tomorrow.